Hello, this video is about Herbert Marcuse and his book, The One-Dimensional Man. It's one of his best books, his most influential books. I'm going to go through some of the paragraphs here, try to bring out the important points, and kind of save you from reading the book. And this is an academic philosophical work. It was very influential in the 60s. In fact, let me read this quote from Stanford here. It said, "The Frankfurt School has had an enormous impact on philosophy as well as social and political theory in the United States and around the world. In the 1960s, Marcuse ascended to prominence and became one of the best-known philosophers and social theorists in the world. He was often referred to as the guru of the New Left." And my interest in this subject is, I talk a lot about postmodernism online, just getting into fun discussions and such. And I wanted to see how far down this postmodernism thing went. And it's easy to pick up the book and read it, so I want to bring out some of the philosophical points in this, and it's not going to require much. You can follow along, and you can see I'm not sympathetic to Marcuse at all. And in fact, the first thing I want to do is this first thing right here. Marcuse had a hatred for contemporary industrial society. And what that means is he sees the dominant society and he wants to reject it completely. And this is actually from the introduction. And I'm not going to read it. You can see it's what I'm trying to say is a lot of the book is Marcuse hating on popular culture of the 1960s. And he goes into kind of the difference between high culture and low culture, and how the difference kind of erodes, because Marcuse has a real appreciation for high culture. But in the 60s, a lot of the high culture got re-rolled into low culture. And that really I'm not sure if it really bothered Marcuse, but he certainly wastes a lot of time trashing it. And the second part of this paragraph, I'll explain more about Marcuse. We can see he's lamenting, he's complaining about radicals aren't being critical of popular culture enough. And eventually, popular culture is so oppressive, that means that eventually criticizing popular culture, criticizing Western culture is just going to disappear, because Western culture is so oppressive. That's what I believe this second part means. Oh, lost my place a little bit. Okay, this what I have selected here is Marcuse is complaining again about popular culture, Western culture. He's complaining that higher culture is kind of breaking down criticism. It's breaking down the higher culture, the higher meanings. It's becoming more shallow. It's becoming flatter. And you don't really need to read anything into this. Just understand that he's to his reader, he's trying to criticize Western culture. That's what he's doing. And the second part of my selection here is this desublimation word right here. Desublimation. And what that means it's kind of it's when an idea comes from somewhere and goes away from somewhere. Or that would be sublimation. But desublimation would kind of be, you take a really high up idea, a really sacred idea, a really treasured idea, and you just sort of use it, throw it away, make it disposable. You just sort of make it so common that nobody even wants to speak about it because it's so last week. You can see right here, Marcuse is making it really clear of how popular culture is destroying all the special meanings and the highest expressions of higher culture. And that's a theme he continues for a long time in chapter 3. Now to Marcuse, the Western culture, the dominant culture of the 60s, is totalitarian. So this totalitarian culture is obscuring the true nature of the world, and it's also preventing the important messages of higher art. Like really hoity-toity, really, highbrow art would have these messages that you just can't get anywhere else. But it's Western culture that is preventing that, and also pop culture, and I think he uses industrialization culture, because if you think about it, I mean, there is kind of a cultural machine, even back in the 60s. People were just cranking out entertainment. So what we have here is a little bit more of Marcuse. He's going against the Western culture of the 60s, which is all about making a false narrative about the world. But you can see the high culture, which Marcuse loves, actually has special messages that are impossible to convey in this machine culture. What we have here, and we're still on chapter 3 in Marcuse. Marcuse is talking about the ability for poetic language. He says that only poetic language can hint at something that could be, hint at something that doesn't really exist but could exist. So Marcuse, you have to think that Marcuse really wants to bring something new into the world. He wants a transformation. And that's what I'm getting at. This guy, I think Marcuse is important because he's just like a huge figure and breaking down and just ending Western culture. And in this book, The One-Dimensional Man, it's just one paragraph after another. He's telling you how to do it. This next clip from the book, it's kind of hard to explain. Marcuse is talking about the unification of opposites. But why is he talking about the unification of opposites? It's because basically when you talk about the unification of opposites, you're talking about, cops and robbers, they're just two sides of the same coin. Robbers are just as bad as the cops. There's no really difference in between it. For instance, the cattle rustler is just as bad as the rancher. They're pretty much the same thing. And to me that's disturbing because it doesn't emphasize right or wrong. It doesn't emphasize order anymore. He's talking about unification. And for Marcuse, right and wrong are in popular culture, Western culture, and this bothers him. So what he wants to do is to take away the difference between right and wrong And also what we have here is the desublimation word again. He says, this will allow a sweeping desublimation. And pretty much that means just kind of erasure. And it doesn't mean erasure. What it means, it means it's going to make it common, and you're going to laugh at it, you're going to deride it. When you think about right and wrong, you're not going to take right and wrong seriously. You're just going to go, oh, whatever. You're just going to forget about it. And so sublimation would be taking a large concept and putting it into action everywhere. But desublimation would be taking a large concept out of everywhere. And with that horrible explanation, I think I've tortured you enough. And hopefully I can finish chapter 3 and you guys can feel like you learned something directly from Marcuse. Thank you very much.